Okay, so when you are making your recording, you have to remember that you're capturing audio as well as video. A lot of times they're coming from the same device, but a lot of times you'll get the best results if you have two different devices. So you can use your smartphone and get good results. Um, you can use an interface, like something like this. Those of you that have them know how to use them. This is probably the best quality version you could have for the audio side of things. But regardless of where your microphone is, whether it's on your computer, on your phone, if you have a dedicated mic like this one, there are principles that always apply. So you have the most important thing for your audio is that your signal is at a good level. You don't want it to be too loud. You don't want it to be too quiet. You want to adjust for the loudest part of your piece, which is why if you've been to a recording session, the engineer most likely has asked you, play me the loudest thing you're about to play. Because if you go past that threshold, you reach digital distortion if your mics aren't set for it. That's called input gain or microphone sensitivity on some things. And this is what you want to adjust. So you have three different tools at your disposal to account for how loud or how soft your recording is. The first two you have direct control over. It's just the volume of the source itself. So if you're a vocalist, it's how loud you're singing. If you are an electric guitarist, it's the volume of your amp. If you're an acoustic player, brass, it's how loud you're playing. So this is, you have control over that, but also you're at the limitations of the music. So if they dictate you play softly here or you play loudly here and you're playing your loudest and it's still not enough, then you have to go to the next thing that you have at your disposal, which is your distance from the microphone. The closer you are to the microphone, the louder you're going to be. The further away, the quieter you're going to be. And so let's say you are playing your loudest, you are right next to the microphone, but for some reason your signal still isn't strong enough, it's really faint. Then you need to adjust the input sensitivity of your microphone. And that is going to depend, it's going to be different depending on which microphone you're using. In my case, I have this microphone going through an interface similar to this one. I can just turn the dial. Boom. I want it more input gain, so I turn the dial. I have more input gain. Magically, that's how it happens. If you are using the microphone on your computer, you have to go to your system settings. So if I share my desktop and show you on Apple products what this looks like, um, you go to your system preferences here, and for your input, if you choose your internal microphone, which would be just on your laptop or whatever, then you'll have the option to adjust the volume down here. And what the ideal situation is, you have this level as low as you can have it and still get a good sound, because as you raise the sensitivity of the microphone, you also hear a lot more background noise in the room as well. So that's why you want this as low as possible, because then the background noise is as low as possible. And then you slowly want to increase this until you get to the level where the balance is appropriate. And so all of this assumes that you're going to be sound checking this at least a couple times before the performance. You don't want to just show up, turn everything on, start recording, have a flawless performance only to find out it was not recorded well enough, and so you can't actually use it, or it was too loud and everything was distorted. So those are the best practices for the audio side of things. And just to demonstrate a couple of those, so this microphone, I've been standing, within a foot of it. But if I back up and just keep talking at the same volume, you're going to hear a lot more room sound. This is like 4 feet away. If I'm all the way back here, not changing the way I sound, you can probably hear me, but it's just going to be faint, right? And then as I get closer and closer to the microphone, the sound gets better and better, or at least louder, maybe not better. Okay, so other devices that you may have, you might have like a portable recorder or a Zoom. This is a Zoom H4n, and one of the benefits of this is it has microphones right in the front, so you don't need any additional microphones, and it records directly to an SD card. So you can just take it out, put it into your computer, boom, you have your files. You don't need to export anything. It's already just saved as a WAV or an MP3 or whatever you set it to save. So we talked about the volume of the source, the distance of the microphone from the source, and the input gain or microphone sensitivity. On the H4s, it's on the side. You may not be able to see it, but rec level, and there's plus and minus. And as you change that on this particular device, it just will display a value from between 1 and 100. So yeah, you can't really see that, but there you go, 70, we're at like 74. And so what you would do is you would try different levels, different distances, and different volumes of your performance to maximize the sound of your voice or instrument and minimize the background noise. So those are the variables that you have to play, and it is a balancing act between them. Okay, so now I'm not using this microphone. This is the onboard microphone of the iMac that I'm using. So this will give you a sense of how it's different. You probably hear a little bit more room sound because it's not as good of a microphone, and I'm further away from it. But what we are going to look at now is, as of today, September 1st, Zoom rolled out an update that includes what they call high fidelity audio, which requires, you can take advantage of it, but you have to have an external interface like we talked about before. So if you have one of those, there are settings where you can enable that. And what you play into the Zoom meeting will be of higher quality to those listening on the other end, provided you have a fast enough internet connection to support it. So it goes without saying, but we'll say it that obviously a wired internet connection is better because it's likely faster. So the more stable and faster internet connection, the more reliable your audio is going to be, since we're doing this all over the internet. And if I share my desktop, I'll show you what this looks like in Zoom land. So once you have the update, if you go to your audio settings, down under advanced, you'll see this high fidelity music mode, and you'll see this echo cancellation. You can leave set to auto. You can also turn on stereo audio, and you can disable the echo cancellation altogether. But also there's, this is one option that you'd want to be aware of. Suppress background noise. It tells you select the default noise suppression level low to optimize for music. So thus I have it at low. Also, let's pretend the volume of my voice right now is way too loud. This is where I could adjust that. And this is my input volume, or my input gain for my onboard microphone for the computer. And again, this is where I said you want this value to be as low as possible and still get a good sound. I'm not actually monitoring this right now, so I don't know how faint or how loud I am. But usually Zoom's little indicator here, you want green. Not yellow, not red, you want green. So at least for those bars. So if you are fortunate enough to have a digital interface like this, then you know that your microphone is plugged into here. This is plugged into your computer via USB, hence being called an interface. The interface is between the audio signal and the computer. And you then need a program on your computer that can look at that interface and say, hey, I'm ready to record audio. Those programs are called digital audio workstations, or DAWs. Common ones are Pro Tools, Logic Pro, GarageBand, Ableton. Audacity is free, so that would be a good one. And what that looks like, one thing that's important, regardless of which one you use, I'll share my screen here again and just show you what it looks like on Ableton. When you're doing this and you're recording, you want to make sure that the sound that you're recording of your voice or your instrument is not coming back out of the speakers as you're recording. So if you're doing this on your computer, you'll want to have headphones, or you'll want to mute your speakers when you record. Why would you want to do that? Because you don't want the sound coming out of your computer to go back into the microphone. This is what causes feedback. You only want the sound of your performance to enter the microphone. So in this particular program, This is how I would turn on input monitoring. So I want that off. I would arm my track. I would hit record. I record my thing. I look at the waveform. I see if it's, so if I make some really loud sounds, I don't want my waveforms that big. I want them kind of in the middle, you know, so that's more what I'm looking for right there. Then I would go back, play it, listen to it. But the point is, when you're recording, you don't want sound to be coming out of your speakers that can make it back into the microphone. This is why you want headphones, because we know that the sound is only going to the headphones, which are not anywhere near the microphone, all isolated here rather than just being out into the open and causing feedback. Okay, so we talked about audio. Let's talk a little bit about video. You obviously want to look decent when you're doing this, because you'll probably be making videos for things much more important than recital class in the future, and you want to represent yourself well. So the golden rule, I guess I'll declare it, the golden rule is good lighting trumps everything. If you have good lighting, you can get away with having not so great of a camera. But if you have an amazing camera and you have really poor lighting, you're going to be limited. So you want to optimize that whenever you can. And one of the easiest ways to do it, if you're zooming, I am just decreasing the brightness of my screen. And as I increase the brightness of my screen, you'll see my face then jumps out, and it's kind of like a little too bright. It's blowing out the white. So I would need to back up some, and then you'll see those like bright colors kind of tone down a little bit. So this is what you would look for on your camera when you're recording. And just like you do a sound check, you would want to do a video check to see how everything looks as well. But so increasing the brightness of your screen or turning on lights is another way to do this. And you want your lights to be facing you. You don't want lights to be facing the camera. If you're not familiar with backlighting, that will give you horrible results. If it's during the day and there is a massive window behind me and there's sunlight coming in, it's going to make me look like a shadow. The camera is going to adjust for that bright light behind me, and you're not going to be able to see me. You want people to be able to see you, so try to avoid that. If possible, close the blinds, cover the windows so that you can control your lighting inside. And I'll show you a couple examples. So yeah, here we are with all the lights in the room off except for my computer screen staring me in the face. There we go. And I'll just turn on like a couple lights. So that's just 2 lights overhead. You can see kind of dim, a lot of shadows around my edges of my face. The microphone looks kind of shadowed. This chair, all of the dark colors are really, really dark. So they're not really popping out too much. And this is with 4 more ceiling lights. We can flip up a little bit. So that's kind of what we have going on here. There's just some can lights up on the ceiling, and that's usable. This is, you know, solid lighting. I would do that. I would find this acceptable. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple of examples using, this is a relatively small light, but a relatively powerful light. This particular one lets me adjust both the brightness and the temperature. So white. And the idea here is to show you how much difference a little powerful light like this can make in your setup. So I'm going to dim these background lights. All right, so we're back to subpar lighting, really harsh shadows. All of the darks are super dark. I'm going to turn this as low as it can go because I can't put it too far away from me. So let's do this, and I'll just like set it up kind of over here. And so right away, even just having that little light to the side makes this almost usable. The background still looks pretty dreary and dark and depressing. I wouldn't want to do that. But the subject, the performance, you are going to look better, even with just one light over there. If you have another light, you would put it on this side so that you have less of a shadow coming from this side of your face. And if I put it up to like the highest setting possible, you can see the room behind me kind of start to light up there. So um, good lighting is important. Have options. If you don't have a light like this, you can use lamps. You can use people's flashlights from their phone. Really anything. And you can try and match the color of it. So if it's like a yellow light, they're all yellow. But that's in the best case scenario. Sometimes you just have to roll with whatever you have around. Okay, so if you have your audio and your video, now you need to combine them. You'll do this with a video editing program. And if you have a Mac, you can use iMovie. It's totally capable for everything that we've talked about here. And if you have the Pro Apps bundle for Apple, you can use Final Cut Pro, which is an upgraded version of iMovie. If you're on Windows, you can use OpenShot, is a good free alternative. There's also, there's a handful. I think they have Movie Maker 10 is for Windows, but you may have to like pay for the Pro version. I can't remember. There might be like a free version and a Pro version that's like $20 or something. And this is another important point. It's easiest to sync your audio with your video if you visually see a large waveform. If you remember from when I was recording earlier in Ableton, we saw like really loud percussive waveforms. This is why people, when they're filming movies, they have the little clacker, take one, take two, because it physically creates a large visual waveform in the audio file that you can look at on all of your tracks that we're recording, and you could say, okay, that's where it happened, and then you can drag them and line them up over top of each other. So sometimes you'll see recording engineers after the concert is done and everybody's left the hall, they'll just walk out into the middle of the stage, wait for quiet, and have a couple like really loud percussive claps or something. This is what they're doing. They're trying to give themselves a sync point for later. And you should do the same. All right, so here's an example of two tracks, and you can see how much more easily they will line up if you have a very percussive and abrupt attack on your waveform. Right, so we can zoom in even farther and get those relatively as close to in sync as possible. So the idea is that one of these would be your video file, one of these would be your audio file, and you would now be able to sync them in place. Okay, one last thing. If you are using your smartphone or your laptop to do this, the limitations that you have are that your microphone and your camera are in the same place. So when you move one, you move the other. We talked about having the distance of the microphone from the source of the sound be a key role. And if you need to change that, then you're going to have to reframe your shot because your camera is also moving. So, but nonetheless, the variables are still the same. How you manage them changes. Your distance from the microphone, the volume of the source, and the input gain or the level of the microphone. And then video, you have to, you want to frame your shot so that people can see you clearly, that you're in the center, you're the focal point of the shot, that nothing else is present that's going to be distracting.